The challenge begins. The great hall of the alien council was filled with cold silence. Tall figures with strange eyes and shining armor stood in rows, their gaze fixed on the single human who was brought inside. The human's steps echoed as he walked forward. His hands bound, his eyes steady. He did not show fear even though the room was filled with creatures far stronger and stranger than him. At the center of the hall was a raised platform, and on that platform lay a broken figure. It was an alien woman, her skin pale, her body weak, scars running across her arms. She did not lift her head. Her eyes remained closed as if she no longer wished to live. The council members whispered among themselves, their voices carrying amusement and cruelty. They had chosen her for a reason. The alien High Lord, whose crown of bone marked his power, stood and raised his hand. His deep voice thundered through the chamber. "Human, today you will face our test. We offer you this woman. She is nothing. She is discarded. She is broken. Her spirit is gone. What you do with her will show us the truth of humanity." The human looked at the woman. His brow tightened, his chest heavy. He could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes watching him. They expected him to laugh, to mock, or to use her as an object. That was the tradition of this test. The aliens had always believed that humans were selfish and cruel. They waited for him to prove them right. But instead, the human kneeled beside her, his face softening as he saw her pain. He did not speak cruel words. He did not push her away. His hand, though chained, reached carefully to brush dust from her cheek. The woman stirred slightly, opening her eyes just enough to see the strange figure kneeling next to her. Her gaze was weak, almost lifeless, but there was a spark of surprise in them. Gasps rose in the hall. Alien voices filled the air with disbelief. What is he doing? Why does he not begin the trial? Is he mocking us? Their sharp whispers carried anger and confusion. This was not how the test was supposed to go. The High Lord narrowed his eyes, his voice low but cutting. "Do you not understand, human? She is a tool, nothing more. You are meant to show us your nature. Do not waste our time with false kindness." But the human did not move away. He bent closer and whispered softly to the woman, "You are not nothing, you are alive, and while I stand here, no one will treat you as broken." His words were gentle, yet firm. Words that made the alien woman's lips tremble, her chest rising with a small painful breath. The council chamber stirred with unrest. Some aliens laughed mockingly, others frowned, unsure of what they were witnessing. One alien commander muttered, "This human is weak, his compassion is weakness. He is unfit for survival." Another, however, whispered, "Or maybe it is strength we cannot understand." The woman tried to move her hand, her fingers shaking, and the human carefully supported her, even though his wrists were chained. He lifted her gently into a sitting position. She leaned against him, her breathing shallow but steady. For the first time in years, she felt the warmth of someone who cared. The High Lord slammed his staff on the ground, the sound echoing like thunder. "Enough! You think you can impress us with this act of mercy? You think you can change our judgment?" His eyes burned with anger, but inside that anger was unease. For he had seen many humans take this test before. None had done this, all had failed, but this one was different. The human raised his head, his voice calm, but carrying across the hall. "You wanted to test me. You gave me someone broken. And you wanted me to break her more. But that is not my way. If you wish to know what humanity is, then look here. We do not crush what is weak. We try to heal it, even when the world tells us it is worthless." The silence that followed was heavy, so heavy that even the woman, weak and trembling, could feel it. She looked at him with eyes that now held a flicker of light, a small spark of hope, something she thought she had lost forever. The alien leaders sat frozen, unsure of what to say. Their tradition was built on cruelty, their judgment on strength. But here was a human defying them, not with weapons, not with violence, but with compassion, and somehow, it shook them more than any blade or threat. The High Lord finally spoke again, his voice low. "This is only the beginning, human. Your choice has surprised us, but the test is far from over. We will see if your mercy survives what comes next." The human tightened his grip around the woman, his eyes unblinking, his voice steady. "Then bring your trials, but remember this moment, because you cannot break what is already healing." The chamber erupted with voices, some mocking, some angry, some uncertain. But in the middle of it all, the human sat with the broken alien woman resting against him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was not broken forever. The challenge had begun, and no one in that hall realized how much it would change them all. Whispers of defiance. The council hall did not forget what they had seen. The image of a human kneeling beside the broken alien woman spread through every corner of the empire. Whispers carried across corridors, through servants, through guards, through noble courts. The human had not treated her as trash. He had treated her as a person. The alien leaders thought the story would fade, but instead it grew. Guards who carried him back to his small stone chamber spoke in hushed voices. He touched her like she mattered, one guard muttered. Another sneered, "It is weakness, nothing more." But deep inside, even the guard who mocked felt unsettled. Inside his chamber, the human sat with the woman resting on a mat of rough cloth. He had been given no food, no water, only chains. Yet he shared what little warmth he had with her. She shivered in the cold air, her voice a broken whisper. Why do you care?" He looked at her with steady eyes. "Because you are alive," he said simply. "And that is reason enough." Her heart trembled. She had heard many words in her life. Words of cruelty. Words of orders. Words that stripped her of hope. But never words like these she wanted to believe. But fear held her tongue. The next morning, guards stormed into the chamber, dragging the human to his feet. "The council demands another display," one snarled. They yanked the woman away from him, her weak hands reaching toward him, her voice breaking into a soft cry. The human's jaw tightened, but he did not fight. His eyes followed her until she was taken from sight. They dragged him to the training pit, a vast arena where creatures twice his size circled. The crowd filled with alien nobles, their laughter sharp. The High Lord sat above them, his voice booming. "Yesterday the human showed us mercy. Today he will show us what mercy costs." Chains were removed. A monstrous alien warrior stepped forward, blades along its arms, eyes burning red. The crowd cheered for blood. The human stood firm, his mind not on victory but on survival. If he fell, the woman would be left alone again, and he could not allow that. The beast charged, its roar shaking the ground. The human dodged, rolling aside. Grabbing a broken staff from the dirt, he struck fast, not to kill but to disarm. He moved with desperate strength, his body pushed beyond its limit. Every strike carried the thought of the alien woman waiting. Broken but alive, the crowd grew restless, their cheers turning to murmurs. They had expected the human to fight with savagery, to kill without thought, but instead he struck with precision, forcing the beast back without ending its life. Sweat dripped down his face, his arms shaking, yet his eyes never lost focus. Finally, with one last strike, he brought the beast crashing down. His staff pressed against its throat. The arena went silent. He could kill, but he did not. He threw the staff aside and stepped back, his chest heaving, his voice echoing. "I will not kill for your entertainment. Not when it proves nothing." Gasps filled the air. The council chamber stirred. Nobles shouted in outrage, "He defies us! He insults our trial!" But others whispered, "He spared the beast just as he spared the woman." Whispers of defiance began to spread again. The High Lord's voice thundered, "You dare deny us blood? You dare twist our test?" But though his tone was rage, in his heart a seed of fear had been planted, for the human had broken the unspoken rule, that mercy had no place in their empire. Later the woman was returned to him, her body weak but her eyes brighter than before. She touched his hand with trembling fingers. "You fight, but not like them," she whispered. He nodded softly. "I fight to protect, not to destroy." For the first time in years, she allowed herself a small, fragile smile unseen by them. Guards whispered outside the chamber door. "Did you see? He could have killed the beast, but he refused." Another muttered, "Maybe humans are not what we thought." Whispers became talk. Talk became rumor, and soon rumor became unrest. Across the Empire's halls, aliens argued. Some mocked the human as weak. Others began to wonder if strength was more than blood and cruelty. The High Lord sat alone in his chamber that night, his fingers curling tightly around his staff. "This cannot continue," he growled. "If the human's defiance spreads, it will poison the minds of our people." Yet deep in his heart he knew the poison had already begun. The woman, once silent and broken, now sat a little taller. Her spirit stirred, her hope rekindled. She whispered to the human as she leaned against him, "They wanted to break you, but instead, you are breaking them." And though he did not smile, his eyes burned with quiet fire because he knew she was right. The test was no longer theirs, the test had become his, and each act of mercy was turning their cruel world upside down. The whispers of defiance had begun, and they would not be silenced. The turning point. The Empire thought whispers would fade, but instead they grew louder. Corridors filled with talk of the human who refused cruelty. Guards argued in low voices. Servants carried rumors like fire through dry grass. Some laughed at his weakness, others began to wonder if weakness was in fact another kind of strength. The council decided to break him once and for all. They dragged the human into the grand assembly chamber, higher and darker than before. This time thousands of eyes watched from shadowed balconies. The broken alien woman was forced to kneel in the center, chains clinking against the floor. Her head bowed but her eyes searching for him. The High Lord's voice thundered, "Human! You dared to defy our trials, you dared to spread unrest with your mercy. Now you will be tested in front of all. Choose her life or your freedom." The chamber roared with approval, aliens pounding their fists against stone. They thought he would hesitate, that he would abandon the broken woman when given the chance of freedom. It was the perfect trap, but the human did not even blink. His answer came sharp and clear. "Her life," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "There is no freedom worth having if it comes at the cost of abandoning someone who trusted you." A stunned silence followed, one so heavy it pressed against every chest. Even the woman gasped, her eyes filling with tears she had long forgotten how to cry. The High Lord's face twisted with fury. "You shame yourself. You shame your species," he roared. But the crowd did not cheer this time. Instead they murmured, uneasy, unsure, because deep down, even they could not deny the courage in his words. The woman lifted her head slowly, her voice shaking but strong enough to echo. "No one has ever chosen me before." Her words pierced through the silence, raw and honest. They struck the hearts of those who had treated her as worthless. The High Lord struck the floor with his staff. "Enough! Guards, strike them both down." Blades were drawn. Armored soldiers rushed forward, but the human stepped in front of the woman without hesitation. His body tense, his fists clenched. He had no weapon, no armor, only his will. Yet his stance carried the weight of unshakable defiance. The crowd rose in chaos, shouts filling the hall. Some demanded blood, others cried out in protest. The Empire itself was divided in that moment. One young alien noble, hidden in the balcony, whispered to his companion, "If he stands against death with nothing but his body, what does that make him? Weak or unstoppable?" The woman's hands shook as she clutched his arm, her broken voice rising. "They can kill us, but they cannot kill what you have shown me." The guards circled, the High Lord's rage blazing. But for the first time in countless years, doubt filled the chamber. Because the turning point had come, this was no longer a test of a human. This was a test of the Empire itself, and the Empire was failing. The uprising of hope. The great chamber trembled with noise. The High Lord's order still hung in the air. Guards pressed forward with blades raised, their eyes cold. Their armor shining under the burning torches, the human stood unarmed before them, his body a wall between death and the broken woman, his chest heaving but his gaze unshaken. The crowd expected the human to fall quickly. They expected him to be crushed. But something strange happened. The alien woman, who for years had remained silent and bowed, slowly rose to her feet, her body weak, her chains heavy, yet her voice cut through the chaos. "Stop," she said, her words trembling but clear. The guards froze for a moment, confused. The crowd leaned forward, silence falling like a storm breaking. No one had heard her speak in years. The woman's eyes glowed faintly, her spirit awakened by the human's defiance. "I was nothing to you. I was broken, discarded, forgotten," she said, her voice rising with each word. "But he saw me not as trash, not as a toy, but as living." Her words spread like fire, echoing through every balcony, every ear. The crowd that once mocked her now shifted uneasily. Some looked ashamed, some angry, some afraid. The human's hand gently touched her arm, steadying her, giving her strength. The High Lord slammed his staff against the floor. "Silence!" he roared. "You are no one, your words mean nothing." But his command failed because the crowd was listening, and the woman did not stop. "You wanted to test him, but in truth you tested us. For years you taught us strength was cruelty, that mercy was weakness, but look at him." She pointed at the human, her chains rattling. "He stands with nothing but his will, and yet you all tremble." Gasps filled the chamber, the crowd erupted in argument, voices clashing. "He is dangerous."
"No, he shows courage we do not have."
"Kill them both! Free them!" The Empire's unity cracked like glass struck by a hammer. The guards moved again, blades rising, but the human stepped forward. His voice steady, louder than the storm. "If you strike, then strike me first. But know this. Every time you see mercy and call it weakness, you plant fear in your own hearts because deep down, You know mercy is stronger than your cruelty. The words stung like fire, and for the first time some guards hesitated, their hands trembling on their weapons. They looked at each other, doubt crawling into their eyes. The woman's voice rose higher, fierce now, no longer broken. You tried to kill my spirit, but he gave me hope, and with hope, I am stronger than your chains, stronger than your fear, stronger than your empire of cruelty. The chamber shook with voices, nobles shouting, soldiers faltering, the High Lord's rage reaching its peak, his voice like thunder. Enough. If no one else will do it, then I will. He descended from his throne, his staff glowing with deadly energy. His steps heavy, the crowd pulled back in fear. Even his own guards did not dare block his path. The human tightened his stance, ready to take the blow, the woman gripping his arm, refusing to fall back. The High Lord raised his weapon, his voice filled with fury. Your hope will die here. But before he could strike, a sound erupted. Not from the throne, not from the staff, but from the crowd itself, voices crying out, "No! Enough blood! Let them live!" The unrest that had been whispers now became a roar. The chamber shook with rebellion. The High Lord froze, his eyes wide with rage and disbelief. His empire was slipping from his hands, not because of war, not because of invasion, but because of a single human and a broken woman who dared to rise. The woman lifted her chin, standing taller than ever, her chains still bound but her spirit free. "You cannot kill hope," she said, her words striking like a blade. "Because even if you cut us down, others will rise after us," and in that moment, the crowd was no longer united under fear. They were divided by hope, and that division was more dangerous to the empire than any army. The uprising had begun, and the council could feel their power slipping. The stunned silence. The High Lord stood in the center of the chamber, his staff glowing with violent energy, his eyes burning with fury, yet his hands shook not from weakness but from something far more dangerous, fear. The roar of the crowd thundered around him, not cheering, not united, but divided, their voices clashing like blades. "Kill them!" shouted some, their faces twisted with anger. "Spare them!" cried others, their voices rising with passion. The hall that once obeyed his every word now trembled with defiance. The human stood tall, battered and bruised, but unbroken, his body shielding the alien woman who leaned on him yet refused to hide. Her chains rattled as she faced the High Lord directly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You cannot silence us anymore," the High Lord roared and swung his staff downward. The weapon blazing with power, the human threw himself forward, ready to take the strike, but at the last instant, the woman pushed against him, standing in front of him, her weak frame defying the storm. The strike hit the ground beside them, shaking the chamber with a blast of light. Dust and fire scattering, the crowd gasped, their eyes wide with shock. The woman's voice rose above the smoke, trembling but unyielding. "If you kill us, then all will know you fear us, and fear is the death of your empire." The words cut deeper than any blade. The crowd erupted again, but this time the tide shifted. Nobles who once sneered now shouted for mercy. Soldiers who once raised blades now lowered them. Even among the guards closest to the High Lord, doubt burned in their eyes. The human lifted the woman back to her feet, his voice steady, carrying across the broken silence. "You wanted to test humanity, but in truth humanity has tested you. And you failed." The High Lord staggered, his chest heaving, his grip on the staff loosening. He looked around and saw not obedience but rebellion in every gaze. Whispers of hope spreading like fire he could no longer control. One by one, voices rose from the balconies. "He speaks truth. She stands unbroken. Hope is stronger than fear." The hall shook with their cries, the empire's foundation cracking before his eyes. The High Lord raised his weapon once more, desperate to regain control, but this time, his own guard stepped forward, blocking his path, their heads bowed but their stance firm. "No more, my lord," one said, his voice low but resolute. "This ends now." The stunned silence that followed was heavy, crushing, unforgettable. The High Lord's weapon dimmed, his power slipping through his fingers. He looked at the human and the broken woman, and for the first time in centuries, the ruler of the empire saw defeat not from warships or armies, but from compassion. The woman's chains clattered to the floor as one of the guards struck them open. Her hands free at last, she lifted them slowly, staring at the marks on her wrists, then raising them high toward the crowd, her voice echoing, "I am not broken, and neither are we." The chamber exploded with sound, cheers, cries, voices of hope rising in unison. The human placed his arm around her shoulders, steadying her, Together they faced the council, not as prisoner and victim, but as equals, symbols of something greater. The High Lord sank back into his throne, defeated but silent, his empire shaken to its core. He could not command, he could not silence. He could only watch as hope spread beyond his reach. And in that final moment, the entire hall filled with enemies. Allies, nobles, and guards fell into a stunned silence. Not from fear, not from obedience, but from realization. Realization that everything had changed. The human had not only passed their cruel test, he had shattered it forever.